Hello everyone, welcome to my channel. Please subscribe and keep watching more details. Charles exposes the one thing that Frost needs to do to move on from Ainsley in Chicago Med Season 10. Frost's history with Ainsley in Chicago Med has been complicated to say the least, but Charles hints at how the series needs to truly end their story in the way Frost deserves. It's nothing new for One Chicago shows to spotlight real issues that have little bearing on the specific jobs the characters are performing. In Chicago Med Season 10, it seemed as if a lot of those issues had to do with parents and guardians putting their children in questionable or even dangerous positions. Although it's usually the patients who are most affected by these storylines, the core Chicago Med characters haven't escaped from these story arcs unscathed. This became particularly clear when it was learned that former child actor Frost was caught up in a physical relationship with an adult co-star while he was still underage. He's claimed before that it was all consensual, and he hasn't seemed willing to hear any argument to the contrary. Chicago Med Season 10, Episode 19 finally changed that in a major way that could affect Frost's character for some time to come. Both of Chicago Med Season 10's two new characters have proven to be highly intriguing additions to the series, but John Frost's story became much more interesting with the recent introduction of Ainsley Town. Having played Frost's mother in their TV show back in the day, it became instantly clear that she was still attracted to him when he had to pull away from a kiss not long after she arrived to shadow Maggie as research for a new role. But despite his reservations, it took a near breakdown for him to finally open up about their past. While dealing with a child whose mother had abandoned him at the hospital, Frost had to let Charles handle the kid alone because the situation was bringing him to tears. Later, he admits to Charles that he only allowed Ainsley to instigate a physical relationship because he felt close to her and was worried about losing her. Once it's finally out in the open, Frost gains the power to confront Ainsley for taking advantage of him. He tells her to leave him alone, and she appears to oblige. Whether she stays away for good remains to be seen. There are times when Charles' advice on Chicago Med can feel questionable, but he handles Frost perfectly in this episode. Even before Frost begins tearing up, Charles can tell that the way he's dealing with their abandoned patient feels out of character. Frost typically handles children incredibly well, without feeling the need to lie or talk down to them, but Frost tries to reassure their patient that his mother is secretly a superhero and will find her way back to him eventually. It isn't the first time that Ainsley's presence has affected him. Frost previously took issue with an influencer couple who brought their son to Gaffney for a venomous snake bite. He assumed they didn't care about their son because they asked their followers for advice, and Ripley had to correct his bedside manner more than once because of it. While many look down on influencers, Frost might have been compassionate enough to see two parents looking for support wherever they could find it. Because of Ainsley's recent arrival, he was predisposed to see two fame-mongers taking advantage of a child. Assuming that Ainsley does leave for good, she'll probably be one of the least missed among the characters who have left Chicago Med. But now that Charles has pointed out the effect she had on Frost's dealings with children, Chicago Med Season 10 needs to show him improve as a result of having finally confronted his own past. It's hardly uncommon for Gaffney to receive young patients whose medical issues might be blamed on their parents. Frost won't have truly moved past Ainsley's betrayal of his trust until he's handled one of those cases differently than he had been before. One thing the series does extremely well at times is to show the nuance in these situations. Some parents make mistakes, but that doesn't make them bad people. Frost was too blinded by his own childhood to see that nuance with his snakebite patient, but it only takes one similar case to show that his worldview has been broadened enough not to view all questionable adults through the lens of Ainsley's betrayal. Chicago Med only has a few episodes left in the season, but that's plenty to give Ainsley's storyline the ending Frost deserves. Dr. Daniel Charles had always been good at reading people. Years of psychiatry, a near-endless parade of broken hearts, fractured minds, and unspoken traumas had trained him to see beyond the surface. So when Dr. Mitch Frost walked into his office with the same quiet heaviness he'd worn for months, Charles didn't even need to hear him speak. He already knew what the conversation was going to be about. Ainsley. Even in her absence, Ainsley's presence loomed over Gaffney Chicago Medical Center like a stubborn storm cloud. Her transfer to Johns Hopkins months ago had felt like a breakup, not just for Frost, but for the entire ED. Her sharp wit, unfiltered honesty, and quietly brilliant diagnostics had carved a space in everyone's routines, but for Mitch Frost, it was more than professional, it was personal. He hadn't admitted it outright, of course. Frost was the kind of guy who buried emotion under late-night rounds and cold brew. But Charles saw through it all. The sudden avoidance of pediatrics, the way his eyes flitted toward the ambulance bay every time a new arrival rolled in, like he hoped she might stroll back in with her signature sarcastic smirk and clipboard in hand. Now sitting across from Charles in the quiet of his office, Frost was finally ready to talk. "I thought I was over her," he said, not quite making eye contact. I thought I'd moved on." Charles nodded slowly. "But..." Frost exhaled, as if the truth had been sitting too long in his lungs. "She's still here. In my head. Every patient I see, every consult I take, there's a part of me wondering what Ainsley would have said. I know it's pathetic. I just can't seem to let it go." Charles leaned forward, folding his hands. "Mitch, you're grieving." Frost blinked. "She's not dead." "No," Charles said gently. "But you are grieving. You're grieving a possibility. A future that almost was." The silence in the room was thick. You two had something. Whether it was ever spoken aloud or just danced around, it was real to you. And now it's gone. Not because of a fight, not because one of you messed up, but because life pulled you in different directions. That's a very particular kind of pain. Frost swallowed hard. "So what do I do?" "Just wait it out." Charles shook his head slowly. "No, you confront it. But not by waiting. There's one thing you have to do if you ever want to move on." Frost raised an eyebrow. "Yeah?" "You need to forgive yourself," Charles said plainly. Frost looked stunned. "Forgive myself? For what?" "For not saying something when you had the chance. For not fighting harder when she told you she was leaving. For not being braver." Frost opened his mouth to argue, but Charles held up a hand. "I'm not saying you were wrong, or that you could have changed the outcome. Maybe Ainsley still would have left, even if you poured your heart out at the L platform. But this isn't about her. It's about you. You've been living in this loop of what ifs and should haves. That's not love, Mitch. That's guilt. And it's eating you alive." Frost looked down, eyes glazed. "I never told her," he whispered. "Not once. I wanted to. I rehearsed it 1,000,000 times. But I always thought if I waited for the right moment it would land better. She'd see it. She'd stay." Charles leaned back slightly, his voice soft but firm. "The right moment is a myth. All we ever have is now, and you didn't use it. But that doesn't make you a coward, Mitch. It makes you human." There was a long pause. Then Frost said quietly, "She left me a note. The day she left. I never read it." Charles' eyebrows lifted. "You still have it." "Top drawer in my kitchen, sealed. Just sitting there." Charles gave him a measured look. "Then maybe it's time you read it." Frost hesitated, then shook his head. "I'm scared. What if it says she felt nothing? Or worse, what if it says she loved me too, but had to leave anyway?" Charles stood, walking slowly toward his window, looking out over the skyline. "Closure isn't about getting the answer you want. It's about accepting the one you get. If she didn't love you, then you're free. If she did, you're still free, Mitch. Either way, reading that letter means you're finally living in truth, not regret." Frost stared at the floor for a long time. "Forgive yourself," Charles repeated softly. "Not for losing her, for being afraid. Then take that forgiveness and use it to build something new." That night, Frost sat in his apartment, the letter in hand. It was just a plain white envelope with his name written in Ainsley's sharp, confident cursive. No frills, no hearts, just the truth waiting to be unfolded. He stared at it for 15 minutes, then finally broke the seal.